about the plants. It's known as plant anatomy. Okay. முன்னாடி பார்த்தது எல்லாமே external, so it was root and shoot system. So here வந்து it starts from tissue system. Okay, what is a tissue? Yes, cells. What is a tissue? Yeah, group of cells which constitute leads to a tissue. Okay. Okay, what happens is this different types of tissues helps in different functions based upon their location or where they located in a particular plant. Okay, appo enna tissue in ella tissue parts, plant la endha part la tissue present ah irukko adukku they have similar functions. Okay, according to their location where they have been located. Okay, give some example for tissues present in leaves. avangala functions enava irukum? Tissues vandu leaves la irukku, andha tissues ku enna functions irukum? Yeah, that is, what is that function? Photosynthesis and prevent loss of water. Na function kettilla. Photosynthesis. Okay. Plant tissue is divided into two. One is meristematic and another is permanent tissue. Meristematic na enadhu? Meristematic. என்ன ஆகும்னா tissues வந்து they'll divide into many cells to form a permanent tissue. So that is called as meristematic. Meristematic is divided into apical, lateral and then intercalary, and permanent வந்து permanent these permanent tissue is nothing but made up of many meristematic cells. Okay, as I said before, it is divided into two, divided to form a permanent. So permanent tissue will be always composed of what? Yes, and it is divided into simplex and complex. Simple is divided into parenchyma, collenchyma, sclerenchyma, and whereas complex it is fiber and xylem and phloem. Okay, now let us see about meristematic. Okay, I said what is meristematic tissues. Now let us see some characteristics of them. And they are living and contain undifferentiated mass of rapidly dividing cells, and the nucleus is very large in them, and the shape will be spherical, polygonal or rectangular, and the cell wall is only thin with a primary wall made up of cellulose, but here there will be no secondary wall in them. Okay. Okay. Now let us see about the classification of this based on the position where they located. One is apical meristem. Apical meristem na, if they are present in the tip, மேல டிப்போ கீழே டிப்ல இருந்தனா it is called as apical. Intercarpellary na tissuesக்கு in between tissuesக்கு mature tissuesக்கு in between இருந்தனா they are incarpellary meristems, and whereas lateral na they will be present only in mature cells, maybe it plant, maybe its roots or shoot, ana வந்து mature cells la mattum தான் they will be present. So the meristems occur with the top of the tip of the root, and the shoot produce primary tissues are called as apical meristems, and it occupies the tip of the root, while the shoot apical meristem occupies the stem axis. And intercarpellary between the mature tissues known as intercarpellary, and they occur in example grasses and regenerate pairs removed by grazing herbivores. Enadhu grazing herbivores? மேய்கிறது. Yes, both apical and intercarpellary meristems are primary meristems because they will be appear on the early life of the plant itself. ஆனா இவங்க வந்து secondary meristems, ஏனா இவங்க வந்து ஒரு ஸ்டேஜ்க்கு அப்புறம் தான் இந்த lateral meristems வந்து இருக்கும். Okay, and these are meristem produce woody axis, and they appear later than primary meristem, so it is called as secondary meristems. Okay, இது வந்து based on the positions. Next வந்து based on the functions. Okay, that is protoderm, procambium and ground meristem. In the protoderm, the outer portion, outer layer of the tissues avanga protoderm, which avanga vandu they are forms into a epidermis. Okay, they develop into a epidermis, this protoderm. Whereas this procambium na they develop into vascular tissues. Okay, procambium na and the middle la irukku, but they develop into a vascular tissue. Ground stem na they develop into ground tissues. Okay, idu vandu based upon their functions. Okay, now classification of based on their origin. One is primary and secondary. Primary abdina, okay, primary na the rapidly they will be differentiated into primary. First vandu meristematic cells na each meristematic stem na enadhu என்ன நான் சொன்ன மெரிஸ்டமேட்டிக் ஸ்டெம்னா அந்த டைமில் வந்து அவங்க டிவைட் பண்ணி ஆகிறது வந்து ப்ரைமரி மெரிஸ்டம்ஸ். அந்த ப்ரைமரியே இன்னும் கொஞ்சம் டெவலப் ஆகி எக்ஸ்டெண்ட் ஆகிறது செகண்டரி மெரிஸ்டம்ஸ். அந்த செகண்டரி மெரிஸ்டம்ஸ் இன்னும் கொஞ்சம் டெவலப் ஆனால் they are called as tertiary meristems, but not given. Major it is 2 types only. Okay, and now it is permanent tissues. First part of tissues என்னது meristematic. Permanent tissues na, these are made up of meristematic cells as I said before, and they have a definite form and shape. But for meristematic there is no any shape or they are not in any forms, but here they are in very clear structure and they have a definite shape. And now let's see their types. Okay, now it is just a minute. Okay, only 3 types of permanent tissues are there: simple, complex and special permanent tissues. The first one is simple. They have a simpler structure and functions, are called as simpler tissues, and they are of 3 types. One is parenchyma, sclerenchyma and collenchyma. Now let us see about parenchyma now. Okay, parenchyma, these are permanent tissues composed of very thin cell wall. The cell wall will be very thin primary cell wall. So layer வந்து ரொம்ப thin, bulge எல்லாம் இல்ல, ரொம்ப thin தான். அதுக்கப்புறம் what, it is mostly produced by ground tissues. The parenchyma forms the major parts of the plant organs and they are divided into so many chymas. Let us see what is that. Chlorenchyma, that is specialized for photosynthesis. Chlorine naale chlorophyll, so photosynthesis ku helpful வந்து chlorophyll. In the presence of chlorophyll தான் நடக்கும், so it is useful for photosynthesis. And then aerenchyma என்ன இருக்கு? air என்ன என்னது? Okay, yeah, air. So it forms a connective air system, connective the middle irka connective air systems. And then storage parenchyma which stores food like sugar, water and nutrients and all. Xylem parenchyma, xylem always deals with water only, but phloem always deals with food. Okay, that people should remember that phloem not always deals with food only. Phloem la food. Ana இந்த டைப்ல phloem என்ன பண்ணும், helps in translocation of the food. Translocation in search of the food, like எங்க tree leaves ல இருக்கா, buds ல இருக்கா, எங்கன்னு இந்த parenchyma தான் it will reach. I mean, yes. And then stellate parenchyma na avanga வந்து star shaped parenchymatous tissues with a large air space. Okay, stellate parenchyma, just remember it is star shaped. Okay, இது பாத்து. Okay, what are the functions என்னென்ன இருக்கும் உங்களுக்கோட functions? இப்போ நான் இந்த டிவிஷன் பார்த்தல, இதுல இருந்து என்ன சொல்லுங்க, இதுல இருந்து ஃபங்க்ஷன்ஸ் இருக்கும், அவங்களோட ஃபங்க்ஷன் என்னென்ன இருக்கும்? Yes, photosynthesis. Yes, preferred food, I mean stores food. Aerenchyma. Yes, yeah, kind of correct. And then what else? Plant body ki எப்படி ட்ரான்ஸ்ஃபர் பண்ணும்? Food ட்ரான்ஸ்ஃபர் எப்படி பண்ணும்? ஃபுட் அது வந்து தேட தான் செய்யும். இந்த அது பண்ணாது. And it also helps in wound healing. இப்போ எதனா ஒரு காம்பையோ இதுவும் நம்ம உடைச்சிட்டோம்னாக்கா அது சீக்கிரமாக வளர்கிறதுக்கு இந்த parenchyma is very useful. And also in the case of grafting என்னது? grafting method ரெண்டு பிளான்ட்ஸோட ஒரு பார்ட்டை கட் பண்ணி அதை merge பண்ண. ஸோ அதில் வந்து ரொம்ப இது யூஸ்ஃபுல். தட் இஸ் இன் கிராஃப்டிங் திஸ் டைப் ஆஃப் parenchymatic cells and all. ஓகே, நெக்ஸ்ட் இஸ் collenchyma. collenchyma is a simple living mechanical tissue. மெக்கானிக்கல்னா என்னது? support. Yes, support கொடுக்குற tissue. And interspellars are not found, but in parenchyma there are so many intercellular spaces which is formed by which thing? Aerenchyma. But is here there is no any spaces as you can see. And there are 3 types of collenchyma. One is angular, laminal and lacunar. Okay, இதோட functions என்னவா இருக்கும்? First sentenceல அதோட function இருக்கு. என்ன function அது? Yes, support, mechanical support to the growing parts of the plants. And this is also capable of, these cells are also capable for photosynthesis process க்கு கொஞ்சம் help பண்ணுவாங்க. Okay, and the next is sclerenchyma. Sclerenchyma na முன்னாடி பார்த்தவங்கலாம் that is not thick. இவங்க வந்து thick-ம் elongated-ஆ இருப்பாங்க. Okay, elongated, that is lignified cell walls having a few or a numerous pits, and there are 2 types only. One is fibrous, another is scleroids. Fibers na, they have thick walled and then elongated and pointed cells. Generally they will occur in groups only without any spaces and in various parts of the plant. But whereas sclerites na, idukku appadiye opposite, fibers ku appadiye opposite da sclerite, which is short or irregular, spherical or oval and cylindrical scleromatous cells, and the wall is very thick with irregular and the lumen is very narrow. Okay, idoda idu enna irukum functions. It also provides mechanical support to the plant. அதுக்கப்புறம் இதில் இருக்க fibers என்ன பண்ணோன்னா dispersal of seeds வந்து it is very helpful, this type of fibers. Okay, okay. இப்போ simple permanent tissue பார்த்தோம். This is complex. Complexனா அதில் வந்து என்ன simple structure, simple function. இதில் வந்து ஒரு group of cells and other group of cells combine பண்ணி they will have a common function and a origin. So there will be what, one or more number of cells together, and this is known as complex, and which comprises of xylem and phloem. What I said about xylem? Transport of water. Transport of water. Okay, phloem. Okay, xylem வந்து it conducts the water and mineral nutrients upwards from the root to all the aerial parts of the plant, and then it has 4 components. What are they? Tracheids, vessels, and then xylem fibers and xylem parenchyma. Okay, tracheids na, they are very elongated. See, tracheids are, they are very elongated and a primitive cells with a tapering end walls, and they are dead cells which do not contain any protoplast, and the inner layer வந்து எப்படி இருக்கும், very thick formல இருக்கும். and the functions என்ன பண்ணுனா conduct the water and dissolve the nutrients from roots to leaves. roots ல இருந்து leaves க்கு it will pass dissolved formல. vessels வந்து they are cylindrical like structure, yes, long and cylindrical like structure made up of many cells called as vessel members. Okay, and the vessel members, each with lignified walls and a large central cavity. These cells devoid of protoplasm, and the germosperms lacks in their xylem. Yes, okay. And next is xylem fibers. Xylem fibers na, these are the sclerenchymatous fibers associate with the xylem are called as xylem fibers. Okay, the scleromatous fibers which deals with xylem is called as xylem fibers, and these xylem fibers provide what, mechanical strength to the plant. And whereas this xylem parenchyma na, they are thin walled with their walls are made up of cellulose, and xylem parenchyma stores food in the form of starch or fat or other substance like tannins. Okay. Okay, and the next one is phloem. What I said about phloem? Yes, see, same thing, and it have 4 components. Sieve elements, appuram companion cells, appuram parenchyma cell, where else? Another phloem fibers. Okay, sieve elements na enadhu? என்ன இருக்கீங்க sieve elements? Okay, phloem க்கு xylem க்கு ஒரு டிஃபரன்ஸ் எதனா சொல்லுங்க. முன்னாடி xylem பாத்தீங்க இல்ல, xylem எப்படி இருக்கு, இது எப்படி இருக்கு. ஓகே, xylem எப்படி இருக்கு, phloem எப்படி இருக்கு, எனி ஒரு டிஃபரன்ஸ்? டவுன் டிஷ்யூஸ், இது கம்பார்ட்மெண்ட்டாக இருக்குல்ல, அது கம்பார்ட்மெண்ட்டாக இருக்க ஒரு மாதிரி கிளம்ஸியாக இருக்கும். இங்கே பாருங்க, ஒரு இதுவா இல்லை, பட் இது கம்பார்ட்மெண்ட்டாக இருக்குது. ஓகே, அதான் ஒரு பேசிக் டிஃப்ரென்ஸ் பிட்வீன் தம். தீஸ் ஆர் டியூப்ஸ் ஆர் வில் பி லாங் அண்ட் லாங் டியூப் லைக் ஸ்ட்ரக்சர்ஸ் அரேஞ்ச் longitudinally and associated with the companion cells. Companionனா என்னது? Group. So group of cells. Mature sieve elements possess a peripheral cytoplasm and a large vacuole that lacks a nucleus, and they have a Golgi body and a most cytocell. Okay, sieve elements or type up ரெண்டே ரெண்டு sieve cells. one வந்து sieve cell, another வந்து sieve tube. sieve cells na வந்து cell மாதிரி இருக்குது வந்து sieve cells. sieve tubes na, the sieve areas are localized on this ends. This is called as sieve tubes. Okay, ரெண்டு sieve cells connect பண்றது sieve tubes. Okay, next is companion cells na, these are specialized parenchymatous cells which are closely associated with sieve tube elements. That is parenchyma cell which is given there, and usually a single companion is found associated with a sieve tube member. Okay, and the next is phloem parenchyma, which is made up of elongated tapering cylindrical cells which have a dense cytoplasm and nucleus. The wall is composed of cellulose and has a pitch through the plasmodesmatal connections which exit between the cells. And phloem fibers now, they are made up of sclerenchymatous cells and they are generally absent in the primary phloem, and they are found in secondary phloem. What is that primary and secondary phloem? Early stage la irukkiradhu primary phloem, and whereas in idhula next stage la secondary. And the walls of the phloem fibers are very thick and then they are much elongated, unbranched, have the pointed apices. Fibers of jute, flax and hemp have important economic uses. Okay. இப்போ முன்ன பார்த்தது எல்லாமே about tissues and all. Now we will see about tissue system. Okay, what is a tissue system? Tissue system na many tissues together called as tissue system. Okay, and based upon their structure and location, tissue system is divided into epidermal, this is called as dermal, epidermal or dermal, and then ground tissue, vascular tissue. So dermal da vandu outer layer, so they are the protective layer, and whereas ground vandu middle la irukkiradhu ground, but inside which comprises xylem and phloem is called as vascular. Yes, vascular tissue system. Okay, this is the epidermal tissue system. Epidermal da we saw as the outermost layer of the plant, and it comprises three parts. What are they means? Epidermis, stomata and epidermal appendages. Epidermal appendages na enadhu? Appendages na enna? Like extra projections madri, like root hair, trichosomes, like other than the appendages. Okay, now let us see about epidermis. Now they are the outermost layer of the main plant body, and the cells are very much elongated and compactly arranged to form a continuous layers form panadhukku their cells are elongated irukanga, and this layer is interrupted by stomata. So in between the epidermis there is a layer called stomata, and which is separated by, and they are separated by the intercellular spaces. It is usually a single layered and also multi-layered in a aerial roots of aerial roots na eppadi irukum? Yes, and orchids and leaves of Nerarium and Fiscus elastitica. In the roots, epidermis has tubular unicellular projections called root hair. And the next one is stomata na enadhu? Yes, transpiration can help. Yes, the stomata are the openings in the epidermis of most of the aerial parts of the plants, especially the leaves. And enna eppadi irupanga? They are composed of two bean shaped cells as a guard cells which enclose the stomatopore. Avanga vandu evlo open aguvanga like 20. Yes. Okay, these are the types of stomata. Stomata enga present irukko adha base panni there are types. One is apple type, present vandu underneath la irundhuchna, that is called as apple type. Like example, apple mulberry. Oat type na equal parts la surface la irundhuchna adu vandu oat type. Potato na more on the nariya under surface la irukku, rendu side irukum ana more on under side la. Water lily na most upper side la, like example many aquatic plants. Potamogeton type na stomata vestigial or absent. Vestigial na enadhu? Vestigial half. Okay, பாதி இருக்கும் அப்படினா இருக்கவே இருக்காது. Okay, the next one is epidermal appendages. These are the outgrowth known as the epidermal appendages or extra outgrowth vechikalam. There are two types like trichomes and prickles. Prickles na mullu. They are the epidermal hairs present on the stems are called as trichomes, and these are epidermal outgrowths which is temporary or permanent to the plant's parts. Prickles na like multicellular stiff sharp epidermal outgrowth containing some inner tissues in them. Okay, now let us see some functions of yes. Okay, Stomata, what you said, it's used in the gaseous exchange, and the cuticle and fatty material enna pannum, restrict the transpiration. Tough cuticle compact cells provide a definite shape to the body of the plant. Epidermis root vandu avanga vandu can absorb water from the soil, and then site of photoreception plays an important role in circadian leaf movement and photoperiodic induction. What does it mean? Circadian another leaf la plants la circadian another circadian rhythm na another synchronize the light cycle of the photosynthesis kuda life cycle life la light cycle synchronize பண்றது தான் circadian rhythm. But வந்து humans la வந்து it is heart la related ah irukum, okay, but not in plants. Epidermal protoplasm வந்து stores various products of metabolism. Fine. Okay, and the next is ground tissue. Ground tissue is the middle layer, is called as a ground tissue. Now let us see what is that. Except epidermis vascular tissue தவிர்த்து மீதி இருக்கிறது ground tissue னு சொல்றாங்க. And the leaves and the ground tissue consists of thin walled chloroplast containing cells called as mesophyll. And where is, yeah, this is as parts of the ground tissue. Okay, it comprises of hypodermis. Hypodermis is the outer region of the ground tissue. So that is the hypodermis. Okay, that is outer region of the cortex. But idoda part vandu edoda part idu ground tissue. Okay, cortex vandu lies between endodermis and the epidermis, and then consists of parenchyma, collenchyma and sclerenchymatic tissues. It helps in the functions like storage of nutrients and all. Endodermis nale innermost layer of the cortex, and it is single layered barrel shape na eppadi irukum? Yes, arranged without any intercellular spaces, and the cells are parenchymatous. The presence of bands of suberin on the radial and the transfer wall is the characteristic features of them, and these bands are called as Casparian strips. The endodermal cells of the root usually have thick radial and intertangential walls, and these cell walls form a continuous ring which is interrupted at the cell places by a passage cells. And it is all in a well developed endodermis is present in all types of roots, and aerial stem of woody dicotyledonous and gymnosperms with the characteristics Casparian technique. Okay, what is Casparian strips then? Casparian strips. Bands on the radial and the transverse wall la irukradha Caspian strip bands. Okay, another is pericycle. Pericycle எங்க இருக்கு? இருக்கா? Okay, pericycle is made up of a single layer and the many layers of the cells present between the endodermis and a vascular tissue. Okay, and in roots pericycle comprises cells of parenchyma. So what is that? Pericycle is made up of parenchyma cells, and then the initiation of lateral roots and the vascular cambium during the secondary growth take place in these cells only. So secondary growth takes place in pericycle only. And then medullary rays na enadhu? Between the vascular bundles in the dicot stems, and these originate from a apical meristem. Okay, what is apical meristem? Apical meristem, tip of the axis or kila root la irna. Okay, and the pith vandu it is the most inner layer da. The center portion of the root is the pith, and it's occupied by pith. It contains a parenchymatous cells and also sclerenchymatous, lactiphazous, medullary vascular bundles in some cases. And in leaves the ground tissue is parenchymatous and it possesses chloroplast, but in leaves, and main function is to store food and water materials. Ground tissues of leaves na it is made up of parenchymatous cells with distinct intercellular spaces. And the last system what we gonna see is vascular. Yes, okay, vascular tissue la monocots la vandu vascular bundle nale rendu da, phloem and xylem. But in dicotyledonous na or extra or layer vadu, that is called as cambium. Yes, okay. Okay. These are the types of vascular bundles. The first one is conjoined, radial and concentric. Conjoined na the xylem and phloem and the place on the radius na it is conjoint. Radial abdina ஒன்னு இருக்கும் opposite to each other or alternate with each other. Xylem and phloem will be alternate. But whereas this concentric na the vascular bundle is surrounded by another vascular bundle. Okay, that is known as concentric. And this conjoint is divided into two, collateral and bicollateral. Collateral na one patch of phloem is outside the xylem. It is of two, open in dicot and closed in monocot. And bilateral na two phloem patches with the above or below the xylem. Mala illana keela it will attaches. And whereas radial enna agum xylem and phloem vandu different radius la irukum. That is this. Concentric na rendu types, and what are they? Yes, amphicribal or amphivasal. That is, one will be inside, vice versa. Xylem inside arunda adu outside, outside arunda idu inside. Okay. Okay, now let us see in dicotyledonous roots. Okay. Dicot in the root, primary root la vandu enna irukuna, only they have primary permanent tissues. Secondary permanent tissues avangalukku irukadu in dicot roots. Primary permanent tissue na enadhu? Starting stage. Yes, starting okay. So here secondary tissues are absent in dicot roots. Okay, now let us see their parts. The first one is the epidermis. Epidermis is the outermost part of the particular thing and it is equal to the epidermis of the stem, as I said. And the stomata and cuticulus are not present in it. Stomata and cuticle, yeah, they are useful in transpiration, and the cells are very thin walled and tubular, and some of the epidermis cells are prolonged to form thin walled tubular structures called root hairs. What is that? Prolonged abdina enadhu? Yes, prolonged, yes, to form a tubular called root hairs, and the cell produce root hairs called as root hair or trigoblast, or otherwise known as trichoblast. Illama vera முன்னாடி படிச்சோம், முன்னாடி ஸ்லைட்ஸ்ல என்னதான் படிச்சோம்? trichosomes படிச்சோமா? Trichosomes. Okay, another in ectodermis, I'm sorry, cortex na, it lies beneath the epiblema. Let's see, epiblema iruka? Yes, epiblema. So it lies beneath the epiblema, this cortex. Okay, it consists of several layers of thin wall parenchymatous cell with intercellular spaces, and the cells of the cortex stores food. So the main function of cortex is to store food here, and it also conducts water from epiblema to in the inner tissues. Epiblema kidandu vaangi it will give it to inner tissues, and then endodermis na is the innermost part of the cortex, and it comprises of a single layer of same barrel shaped cells without any spaces in it, but the characteristics of thickening long their radial and tangential walls. Tangential na tangential, radial, tangential ஒரு ஆர்டரா இருக்குங்க. Okay, and then these are called as Caspian bands. Okay, Caspian bands na enadhu முன்னாடி படிச்சது? Caspian bands. படிச்சோம், என்ன படிச்சோம் முன்னாடி ஸ்லைட்ல? Yes, suberine, correct. எங்க படிச்சோம்? Of radial and transverse, yeah. Okay, and these Casparian strips are made up of suberin and lignin, and these cells prevent plasmolysis of the endothermal cells. What is plasmolysis? plasmolysis. Lysis na என்னது? Lysis na கேக்குறியா ஆண்டனி? கேக்குறியா நீ சொல்றியா ஆன்சர் எனக்கு? Lysis na என்னது? Plasma formation ku they'll prevent. Another part is stele, and stele. All the tissues inside the endodermis such as pericycle, vascular strand and pith constitute a stele, and these are of three types. Three parts include that: pericycle, vascular strand and pith. So pericycle enga munadi padichom. Pericycle, what is that? Pericycle enna padichom? This is next to the endodermis lies thick, very layer of the thick wall parenchymatous cells referred to pericycle, and the initiation of the lateral roots and the vascular cambium during the secondary growth takes place in these type of cells. Vascular strand it consists of a separate bundles of xylem and phloem arranged alternately to the pericycle. இப்போ என்ன படிக்கிறோம் நம்ம? Vascular strand, right? Okay, such vascular bands are called as radial bundles, and the phloem and xylem are separated from each other by a small layer called as conjunctive tissue. And then pith it is generally absent in dicot roots. Pith enga present la irukum? Where is it presented? Okay, in the center of the particular thing. Okay, center la dhan irundhu pith munadi paakumbodhu. These functions to store food and waste products only, pith oda function, but it's absent in dicot roots. Okay, இப்போ என்னென்ன characteristics la irundha idu dicot நம்ம சொல்லலாம் அப்படினா presence of root hairs irundha we can say, but it's also present in monocots also present. So இத ஒரு வச்சிட்டு நம்மளால can justify it. So endodermis castripian strips la இருக்கணும், otherwise and the absence of pith irundha dicot சொல்லலாம். Radial bundle less than 8. அப்புறம் presence of exarch xylem. Next monocotyledonous root. Okay, and the same epidermis, it is the outermost thin layer of the cells, and then some of the cells gives rise to the root hairs. And then cortex it is a broad zone of parenchymatic. Cortex it consists of parenchymatous cells only, and it is very very thin walled and enclosed with intercellular spaces, and the cortex provide a radial movement of water and minerals from epiblema to the root interior, root tissues kellam kudukum. And then endodermis inner layer made up of bar shaped cells which do not enclose into a intercellular spaces, and the young endodermal cell possesses an internal strip of suberin and ligin which is called as what? Casparian strip. And then endodermal cells lying opposite to the protoxylem groups however remain in the primary stage with usual Casparian strip. Ade ingium stele, again three types of parts only. One is pericyclar, vascular and pith, but here it will be presence of pith, but whereas in dicot there is absence of pith. And then pericycle outer boundary of the stele, and it may be uniseriate, and the pericycle is composed of thin walled parenchymatous cells in young roots la mattum da. And the vascular the same radial xylem and phloem bundles da, and the xylems are here exarch. Angiyum exarch dana, exarch xylem dana angiyume anga dana paduthom. Okay, due to the pressure of numerous xylem bundles and exarch condition, and that is called a xylem of mono root is polyarchy, and the protoxylem vessels are narrow while the metaxylem vessels are very broad, and the pith it is very large and well developed. It is made up of parenchymatous cells with intercellular tissues, intercellular spaces, and this contains starch. Okay, இதெல்லாம் வச்சு we can identify a monocotyledon roots, that is presence of air. அங்க பார்த்தோம், ஆனா அதை வச்சே இதுவுமே ஜட்ஜ் பண்ண முடியாது. So there should be a endodermis with passage cells, அப்புறம் presence of pith, radial bundles more than 8. அங்க yes, and அங்கேயுமே xylem exoarch இருக்கு, and presence of an exodermis. ஆனா அதுல exodermis இருக்கா இல்லையா? இல்ல. Okay, now it is dicotyledonous stem. முன்னாடி பார்த்தது என்னது? Okay, same layers here அதே தான் epidermis cortex but epidermis na அதே protective outermost layer of the epidermis as called epidermis அதுக்கப்புறம் they have a layer of cuticle and a beard trichomes and few stomata it prevents loss of water cortex வந்து below epidermis and extends till endodermis 3 layers அதோட 3 layers என்னென்ன பார்த்தோம் parts என்னென்ன பார்த்தோம்னா hypodermis general cortex and endodermis hypodermis na consisting of collenchymatous cells and which contains chloroplast it is a mechanical support to the stem and whereas this general cortex na located below the hypodermis consists of parenchymatous adu collenchymatous inge vandu parenchymatous and last vandu endodermis vandu general cortex ku keela beneath they have been situated in sunflower it contains starch hence it's called as starch sheath in sunflower okay and then same pericycle vascular strain medullary or pith or medulla okay pericycle na enna paatha munnadi alla தூக்கமோ இல்ல எல்லாருக்கும் தூக்கம் வருதுல்ல உனக்கு வருதுல்ல இல்ல வேற யாருக்கும் வரல இல்ல பார்த்தாலே தெரியுது இப்போ அந்த பொண்ணு அப்படியே நீலா முன்ன ஒரு 10 ஸ்லைடுக்கு முன்னாடியே போயிட்டா தானே okay it exists between the endodermis and the vascular bundles and the cells are sclerenchymatous with lignified cell walls vascular band strand vandu they have many vascular bundles arranged in the form of a ring around a central pith and an inner pericycle medullary rays na enna na these are non-vascular area present in between the vascular bundles ku middle la irukradha medullary rays and this take part in radial conduction of materials like water food and gases pith vandu central part of the stem enga adu absent ah irukum idu okay and how to identification of a dicot stem na they have occurrence of a multicellular hair like epidermis and collenchymatous hypodermis presence of bundle caps or sclerenchymatous pericycle over adu and inge vandu endark xylem mathadula la enna irukum yes okay ipo vandu monocotyledons stem ipo okay இவங்களுக்கும் அதே சேம் பார்ட்ஸ் தான் எபிடர்மிஸ் ஹைப்போடர்மிஸ் கிரவுண்ட் டிஷ்யூ அண்ட் வாஸ்குலர் சிஸ்டம் தெரியுமா ஓகே எபிடர்மிஸ்னா வாட் இஸ் எபிடர்மிஸ் எஸ் அவுட்டர் லேயர் ஹைப்போடர்மிஸ்னா yes consists of parenchymatous cells and then ground tissue na ground tissue எங்க இருக்கும் லாஸ்ட்ல ground tissue அது ground tissue இதுக்கு இருக்கு அப்புறம் vascular system na vascular system எங்க இருக்கும் yeah அது என்ன comprises with and phloem yes okay these are the features to identify them like they have sclerenchymatous hypodermis present na it is monocotyledon stem and undifferentiated ground tissue vascular brings throughout their ground tissue and vascular bundles are conjoined collateral and coarse what is conjoined and collateral conjoined na enadhu radials la irukku okay collateral na collateral illa oru patch with xylem and phloem okay now it is dicotyledonous leaf that is known as dorsiventral also and enna na these are okay leaves enna the leaves are yaar avanga what is leaf help in photosynthesis okay these are generally horizontal and a sunlight falls on their upper surface usually and there are 3 parts that is epidermis mesophile and vascular system okay where is epidermis okay epidermis appo epidermis ku innor layer onu cover pandradhu that is cuticle covers the leaf base and then mesophile where is mesophile iruka okay vascular system that is phloem and xylem irukke phloem xylem protoxylem metaxylem irukku okay protoxylem and metaxylem that is inner part and then phloem vandu keela irukkuda yes okay okay Okay, these are the features. எப்படி நீங்கள் கண்டுபிடிப்பீங்கன்னா ஸ்டொமேட்டோ வந்து அப்பர் சர்ஃபேஸில் இருந்துச்சுன்னா அது வந்து டார்சிவென்ட்ரல் லீஃப். அதுக்கப்புறம் மீசோஃபைல் வந்து டிஃப்ரென்ஷியேட்டட் இன்டூ பாலிசேட் ஆர் ஸ்பாஞ்சி பேரன்கைமா. வாஸ்குலர் bundles are colorless bundle sheath, and then the xylem upper towards upper side and phloem, I mean phloem towards down na mari stem idu, sorry. Okay, and then monocotyledonous leaf, they are isobilateral. What is isobilateral? Bilateral enadhu? Yes. Iso na? Yes. Monocots are generally isobilateral, but some plants they are dorsivent, and the leaves usually show parallel venation only. What is parallel? Theriyumla? Opposite ah போறது ஒரே டைரக்ஷன்ல. Example leaf சொல்லுங்க parallel venation க்கு example. And என்னென்ன components na epidermis, mesophyll, same vascular bundle and extra contain they have a midrib. Okay, where is midrib? Can you find midrib here? No. Okay, we'll see in upcoming slides. Okay, same epidermis, but epidermis divided into two. One is upper and lower. Yes, epidermis na enadhu? Epidermis na enna na ketta. Okay, upper epidermis na made up of parenchymatous cells. They are the uppermost layer, and then it is multi-layered also, like example in ficus or piper plant, and outgrowths called as papillia. So upper epidermis la outgrowth vandhuchna, that is called as what? Papillia. And okay, and lower na stomata and chloroplast வந்து கீழ surface down surface ல ரொம்ப இருந்துச்சுன்னா that is lower epidermis, and there is a substomatal cavities present below the stomata for the gaseous exchange. அப்போ இந்த லீஃப்க்கு மட்டும் என்ன இருக்கு? இந்த டைப் ஆஃப் லீவ்ஸ்க்கு gaseous exchange இல்ல, substomal activities present. Okay, next is mesophyll. Mesophyll na differentiated into two parts, that is upper palisade and lower spongy parenchyma. And the spongy parenchyma lies where? In the below the palisade parenchyma and above the lower epidermis. And the spongy cells contain several chloroplasts, but less than the number present in the palisade cells. And the last is the vascular system, which is conjoined, collateral and endark and closed. Each is surrounded by a sheath of parenchymatous cells, and this xylem consists of what? Vessels, trachea, tracheids, xylem parenchyma, xylem fibers, etc. It is meant for the conduction of water and minerals. இது தான இப்ப பார்த்தோம். இது என்னது? Okay, இது இன்னொரு ஸ்லைடு வந்துட்டு நடுவுல. Okay, now what are the characteristics to find out this is monocotyledonous leaf? Means undifferentiated mesophyll they will be presence of bundle sheath with chloroplast, and then vascular bundle வந்து இது முன்னாடி பார்த்தோமா? இல்ல. Okay, xylem vessels இங்க வந்து ரவுண்டடா தான் இருப்பாங்க, and the presence of large size bubliform cells on the upper surface. Okay, now let us see the secondary growth in dicotyledonous stem. Okay, in the dicot plants la வந்து secondary growth in the stem occurs usually in stele and cortex only. சரியா? And the growth of the roots and the stem in the length with the help of the apical meristem, that is called as primary growth. And the most dicot plants exhibit the increase in growth. Growth na enadhu? Growth na வளருது. Okay, this is called as the secondary growth. The secondary growth is based upon two components only. One is vascular cambium, and another is what? Co-cambium. So, okay, vascular cambium na the meristematic layer வந்து that is responsible for vascular tissues, that is xylem and phloem. Phloem is called as vascular cambium. So, how cambium எப்படி வந்து அந்த cambium ring வந்து form ஆகுது ரவுண்டா. Okay, let's see now. How the parenchyma cells of the primary medulla adjacent to the intrafascicular cambium undergo differentiation. When they undergo differentiation gives rise to the cambium. These type of parenchymatic cells when undergo differentiation they give rise to a cambium. Yeah, cambium. And this joins the cambium of the either side to form a complete ring of the meristematic called the cambium ring. அப்போ half வந்துட்டு அதுக்கப்புறம் மீதி இன்னொரு ஜாயின் ஆகிட்டா அது forms a complete circle, complete ring. Activity of a cambium ring. Let us see what are the activities of a cambium ring. Okay, the cambium ring is made up of two cells. One வந்து ray initials, another is fusilone initials. One is ray initials, another is fusilone initials. And the cells added to the outer side of the cambium becomes secondary phloem. Secondary phloem. And the cells added by the division of ray initials to the inside as well as the outside becomes the secondary medullary rays. First வந்து முன்னாடி இருக்க cambium becomes elements of the secondary phloem. Now it becomes the secondary medullary rays. And the cambium is generally very active in the inner side than the outer side. And a primary and a secondary phloem gets gradually crushed due to a continued formation and the accumulation of the secondary xylem. அப்போ secondary xylem வர என்ன ஆகும்? Primary xylem வந்து crushed ஆயிடும் secondary வளர. At some places the cambium forms a narrow band of parenchyma which passes through the secondary xylem and secondary phloem. Okay, fine. Cork cambium. This is a structure of a cork cambium. சரியா, which comprises of cork. இந்த இதில் வந்து it is called as phloem and then cork cambium and then secondary cortex. This comprises a cork cambium. Okay, the stem continues to increase in girth due to the activity of vascular cambium. So vascular cambium நால தான் the stems keep on increasing its length. And then epidermis layers are broken down and needs to be replaced to provide a new protective layers. So என்ன ஆகும்? Epidermis layers வந்து they keep on breaking to form a new protective cell layers. And this meristematic tissue is called the cambium, cork cambium or a phloem. It develops usually in the cortex region. Where is cortex region?
Below epidermis.
Yes. Okay. And this is of two parts. Okay, the first one is bark, another is lenticels. Bark na enadhu? Yes, correct. So it is a non-technical term used to describe all tissues extended to the vascular cambium, therefore including the secondary phloem. That is periderm and the secondary phloem. When is formed na, it is formed early in the season is called as, okay, earlier when it is formed na, it is called as soft bark. Okay, lenticels na, this is lenticel, example of a lenticel. Lenticel na eppadi irukku parunga. It is a certain region of the stem that is phloem cuts off closely and arranged parenchymatous cells on the outer side instead of a cork cells. Cut ஆயிட்டு அதுல இருந்து வெளிய வந்திருது the lenticels. Okay, now let us see about springwood and autumnwood. Any idea springwood, autumnwood? இப்போ முன்னாடி பார்த்தோம்ல activity of cambium. என்ன பார்த்தோம் activity of cambiumல? என்ன எந்திரிக்கிறீங்களா இப்போதான் எல்லாரும்? நல்லா சாப்பாடும் மதியானம். சரி, இந்த activity of cambium வந்து it's controlled by physiological and environmental factors only. இப்போ spring seasonலலாம் என்ன ஆகும்னா இந்த cambium activity வந்து ரொம்ப ஆக்டிவாக இருக்குமா. ஸோ அந்த ஆக்டிவாக இருந்துட்ட பிறகு ஆமாம் நியூ லீவ் ஆகும். இது நம்ம பார்க் பற்றி தானே பேசிகிட்டு இருக்கோம். ஓகே, என்ன சொன்னேன்? ஸ்ப்ரிங் சீசன் என்ன சொன்னேன்? ஸ்ப்ரிங் சீசன்ல என்ன சொன்னேன்? cambium வந்து ரொம்ப ஆக்டிவாக இருக்கும் which produces a large number of xylem elements. ஓகே, ரொம்ப large amount of xylem elements produce ஆகிறதுனால அந்த டைமில் wood ஒன்று ஃபார்ம் ஆகும். that is called as spring wood or early wood. ஸோ என்ன ஆகும், ஸ்ப்ரிங் டைமில் வந்து கேம்பியம் ரொம்ப ஆக்டிவாக இருந்துட்டு இட் ப்ரொடியூசஸ் மெனி xylem ஆஃப் வெசல்ஸ். ஸோ அப்போ வந்து அந்த டைமில் wood ஃபார்ம் ஆகும். ஸோ இட் வில் பி லைட். ஸோ தட் இஸ் கால்ட் as ஸ்ப்ரிங் wood. ஆட்டம் woodனா அதுக்கு அப்படியே ஆப்போசிட். அதுக்கு அப்படின்னா என்ன ஆகும்னா, அப்போ வந்து ஆட்டம் wood என்ன ஆகும், அப்போ ஆட்டம் சீசனில் என்ன இருக்கும், அப்போ அந்த சீசனில் வந்து இட் வாஸ் ஆக்டிவ். ஸோ இதில் வந்து ரொம்ப லெஸ் ஆக்டிவாக இருந்துடும். அதுக்கப்புறம் there will be only less number of xylem produced by the cambium. So that is known as autumn wood. So it will be dark narrow circle. இது வந்து light wider circle. Okay. Okay. And the next is heartwood and sapwood. Any idea heartwood and sapwood? Heart இது heart. ஓகே, ஹார்டாக இருக்கும்னு சொல்கிறீங்களா? ம் என்ன ஆகும்னா, ஓல்டு ட்ரீஸ் எல்லாம் என்ன இருக்கும், அந்த செகண்டரி xylem வந்து டார்க்காக இருக்கும். டார்க்காக அனாம்ப்ரஸாக ரொம்ப இதுவாக இருக்கும். எப்படி சொல்கிறது, ரொம்ப டார்க்காக இருக்கும்னு வச்சுக்கலாமே. ரொம்ப டார்க்காக இருக்கும். எப்போது in old trees எல்லாம் இருக்கும். old trees எல்லாம் the secondary xylem will be very dark brown due to the எதனாலனா due to the accumulation of organic matters like oils. எதுனா அந்த கீழே அந்த வளரல வச்சு இது ரொம்ப ஆர்கானிக்காக it is turned into dark color. ஸோ அதனால என்ன ஆகும்னா, they will be very resistant to attack the insects or animals. ஓகே, ஸோ அப்போ வந்து so and the region வந்து that region is fully covered with dead organisms. So that is known as heartwood. Okay, heart இப்போ ஓல்டு ட்ரீஸ்லலாம் இது இருக்குது. ஓல்டு ட்ரீஸில் என்ன ஆகிடும்னா, அந்த செகண்டரி xylemலாம் ரொம்ப டார்க்காக ஆகிடுவாங்க. எதனால டார்க் ஆகிடுவாங்கன்னா, அக்யூமுலேஷன் ஆஃப் ஆயில்ஸ், டேனின்ஸ், அப்புறம் இந்த இன்செக்ட்ஸ் எதில் அந்த இது ஆர்கானிக் மெட்டீரியல்ஸ் எல்லாம் ரொம்ப இதுவாகிடும். அதெல்லாம் ரொம்ப டார்க் ஆகிடும். ஸோ அந்த டார்க் ஆகிட்டு என்ன ஆகும், தே பிகம் ரெசிஸ்டன்ட் டு அட்டாக் த இன்செக்ட்ஸ் ஆர் அனிமல்ஸ். அப்போ அந்த ரீஜன் ஃபுல்லாக இட்ஸ் கவர்ட் வித் டெட் ஆர்கானிசம்ஸ் ஆர் டெட் மெட்டீரியல்ஸ். ஓகே, ஸோ தட் இஸ் known as what? Yes. Okay, that is known as heartwood. Okay, and this is called as இதுவே வந்து sapwoodனா என்ன ஆகும்? sapwood சொல்ல கரெக்ட். அப்படியே லைட்டாக இருக்கும், அவ்வளோதான். ஆனால் வந்து செகண்டரி ரீஜனில் இல்லை, செகண்டரி xylem இல்லை, பெரிஃபரல் ரீஜனில் அந்த டைமில் வந்து லைட்டாக இருந்தால் தட் இஸ் கால்ட் as sapwood. ஓகே. Okay. Now let us see the secondary root of dicotyledonous root. Okay. And the secondary growth in the root is very thickness due to the formation of secondary tissues by the lateral meristems. It occurs by the reappearance of two types of secondary tissues. Like what are they? Secondary vascular tissues called cambium and peridium, and these tissues are formed by the meristems are vascular cambium and MRCOG cambium respectively. ஓகே, இந்த ஃபர்ஸ்ட் ஸ்டேஜில் வந்து கேம்பியம் வந்து ரொம்ப சின்னதாக தான் இருக்குது. அந்த எல்லோ பார்ட் இருக்குல்ல, அது ரொம்ப சின்னதாக இருக்குது. பட் செகண்ட் ஸ்டேஜ், அடுத்த ஸ்டேஜில் டெவலப் ஆகும்போது கேம்பியம் ஒரு லேயரே ஃபார்ம் ஆகிக்கிறது இல்லை, அந்த எல்லோ கலர். அந்த நெக்ஸ்ட்டில் வந்து என்ன ஆகுது, என்ன டிஃப்ரென்ஸ் நெக்ஸ்ட்டில் ஆகுது? எதுக்கு ஃபுல்லாக கவர் ஆகிருக்கு? சைலமா? கேம்பியம் ரிங் ஃபுல்லாக சுற்றி ஃபார்ம் ஆகிடுது. ஓகே, அந்த கேம்பியம் ரிங்னா இந்த ஸ்ட்ரைக்ஸ் அந்த லைன்ஸ். அப்போ கேம்பியம் ஆகிட்ட பிறகு இங்கே என்ன ஆகுது, ப்ரைமரி ஃப்ளோயம் ஃபுல்லாக ஆகிட்டு it becomes a correct fully structured, fully developed cotyledon root, dicotyledon root. Okay, and now let us see some. Okay, how does a vascular cambium formed? How it's formed means the conjunctive parenchyma cells on the lateral side of the phloem bundles as well as the pericycle cells lying outside the protoxylem belongs brick shaped. Protoxylem belongs to a brick shaped and a meristematic tissues, and these develop into a wavy band of vascular cambium. So in the எது மாறுது, எது தான் develop into a vascular cambium? Which develop into a vascular cambium? Correct. Pericycle cells, yes. And then the secondary phloem consists of sieve tubes, companion, phloem parenchyma, phloem. Okay, sieve tubes na enadhu? Sieve tubes, companion cells. எதுல பார்த்தோம்? Phloem. Okay, அப்படினா என்ன sieve tubes na என்னது? So companion cells na? Companion?
Supporting cells.
Yes, companion cells. And sieve tubes na? Which carry sieve cells. Okay. And then the activity of vascular cambium, now what they do is they give rise to only a ray initial cells, and the formation of these cells is very slower than the formation of the secondary vascular tissues. Ultimately the cambium becomes circular from this. And then how does a cork cambium forms? A pericercle layer after the division becomes converted into a secondary meristem called cork cambium or a pleogen, and these cells of pleogen divides both